Good morning. It was September 2010 at the Sheraton on 7th Ave and 56 in New York City. It was the 2010 Clinton Global Initiative. As a newly appointed deputy director of the program department, I had all my room settings just perfect. It was all organized, and I had about 12 to 15 people registered for a small group discussion on employee engagement. Well, 50 people showed up, and as every other room was packed, I had to move this session into a ballroom that fit about 300 people. And I was deeply worried that I would offend my speakers and that that audience would be totally lost in a big room. So I hustled in there to see what I could do to help this situation. And when I walked in, I found 50 people utterly and completely engaged in a round circle in the middle of a huge room, and wild horses could not have torn them away. In fact, I couldn't even get the attention of my CGI staff member to give me the okay that things were going well. After that session, we got written comment cards from about 75% of the people in that room, which is unheard of. And I'd like to share some of them with you. They said, "I've been thinking about employee engagement in the completely wrong way. I'm newly inspired to inspire and not control my employees. Forced or rewarded engagement does not equal self-driven, principled behavior. I'm changing my whole approach." And best session I've had at CGI this year. And on, and on, and on. So the questionnaire that I'd asked them to fill out was to rank the speaker. But what they had gushed about was what they had learned and what they would change, how they would change their behavior because of that session. And of course, that session leader was Dov Seidman. Over the next 3 years, Dov became a frequent speaker and a trusted advisor to CGI. In fact, in the foreword to his best-selling book, How, President Clinton shared how CGI was predicated upon the belief that those who succeed in tackling global challenges in an increasingly complex, flat, and interdependent world will be those that behave ethically and live their values. Dov Seidman has pioneered an industry around the idea that the most principled businesses are the most profitable and the most sustainable. Well, that's a very nice belief, but could that possibly be true? Well, this philosophy has been hard fought on the business battlefield. From boardrooms to factory lines to oil rigs, Dov has built a thriving business. LRN has helped more than 700 companies worldwide, including Apple, Dell, Johnson & Johnson, and more, to educate millions on the ethical and legal issues that affect them on the job, to help them to state and to live their values, and to inspire principled performance. Yes, let me repeat that, he has built a thriving business as an educator and as a moral philosopher. But his role as an educator does not stop at LRN. He's a personal advisor and a mentor for me for many years. And last summer, when I told Dov I was launching an education technology company that I believed could transform lives across Africa, he said, "Come and start your business in my office. Come and incubate Andela at the LRN office." The LRN office is a place where you walk in, the mission is projected onto the wall. Every conference room is named after a moral philosopher, and purpose is woven into the fabric of everyday life. By the way, the LRN office is on the southeast corner of Central Park, directly next door to the Apple store. But the park view's okay, but the espresso machine and the snacks are off the hook. So this startup is formally ruined. Where will we ever go from here? But this idea that the most principled business and the most profitable can be the most profitable and sustainable is not just an idea. And as Aristotle would say, Dov has actualized that right on Madison Avenue. So at Andela, we are educating and then employing extraordinarily bright young software developers, but in places of very high unemployment across Africa. And after living at LRN in the LRN office, we have borrowed, with his blessing, the description, "a mission with a business." We struggle with age-old challenges of educators around the world, such as when we deploy limited resources in an environment of such scarcity, which students win and which students lose? How can we educate leaders who will make growth equitable for their entire communities? And when people do not perform, how do we let them go with dignity in a means consistent with our values? And I'm sure as educators that some of these and similar challenges keep you up at night. But I'm extremely excited for you this morning because every time I hear Dov speak, I learn something. And just like that first crowd at CGI, I see tough decisions that I'm making as an educator with renewed clarity. And to me, that is rare. I know it's early this morning, but there is a reason that ASU and that Deborah and her team have asked Dov to kick us off with the how. They've asked Dov to speak for an hour. He's helping us to really frame, to think and inform an entire worldview. And I highly encourage you to get out your pens and pencils right now. Through concrete examples that cut right to the heart of the toughest moral decisions, which are made only more complex by the digital age. Edward Snowden, Sony, and perhaps the best example of this is that last year, Dov was asked to keynote the NFL Owners Conference on respect in the locker room, and then was asked to go to 32 different team meetings to talk to them individually about respect in the locker room. So Dov's approach to the world challenges all of us in the toughest ways to do our moral push-ups, to build our character muscles so that we're ready when tough decisions come. And as educators, you know that they will come. And so it's a great honor and with great excitement that I introduce my friend and mentor and educator, Dov Seidman.
Thank you. Good morning. There's, Christina, there's a Talmudic expression that words from the heart enter the heart. So thank you for touching my heart. With those words, Christina and her co-founder and CEO of Andela, Jeremy Johnson, having you infuse our home with your esprit de corps we came out the better. Watch Andela. It is truly a mission with a business, and you're doing things of significance in the world and creating opportunity. And I'm just proud to blow some wind in your sails. Thank you. You mentioned President Clinton, and President Clinton is fond of saying that leadership is not about headlines. Leadership is about trend lines. Looking at the largest trends and having the courage to internalize what they're about and go on a journey of leadership to manifest what they implore us and urge us to do. I stand before you as a CEO. I stand before you as a parent. But above all, I stand before you as someone for whom education, as I'll explain, not only saved my life, but made my life. And I'd like to just offer some thoughts, because I do not believe that we live in a world that has been dramatically changing. Our world is not just changing. It is being reshaped. And frankly, it's being reshaped faster than we are yet able to reshape ourselves. The implications for us as parents, as teachers, as leaders are profound, and it's the implications of leadership for a reshaped world that I'd like to illuminate and bring to life for you. But first, in the spirit of connection, I'd like to just tell you a bit about myself. This is me in 1982. I know the shorts were short and the hair was big, but I grew up without family money. And to put myself through college, my friend Ruben and I went to Lionel Richie's house every Saturday and detailed with toothbrushes 4 of his cars. And he paid us $50 a car. That was a lot of cash at the time. And this is how I put myself through college. And we washed some doctors' cars, etc. And it was my introduction to entrepreneurship. But the story runs deeper, because if ever a seeming curse would turn out to be a blessing, it did so. Ruben got into UCLA, but I could not. Many of you you have my book. I did not read a book cover to cover until I was 17 years old. I got a 970 on the SAT. I was mortified. I practiced 6 more months, and I improved my score dramatically from a 970 to a 980. True story. I had 2 A's in high school, phys ed and auto shop. But I grew up severely dyslexic. I remember 5th grade when we were reading out loud and those around me were loving the story, and I was on the ceiling of the class so petrified to be called on that all I did was figure out the algorithm. Every 2 paragraphs, the teacher seems to go to the next student, and I figured out where will we be when I get called on, and all I did was practice that paragraph. I spent my entire life in life and on the ceiling of life. And when you do that, you start to connect with those around you who also are suffering and have challenges. But as I said, what I then did when Ruben got into UCLA is I wrote them a letter. I said, "Dear UCLA, you've accepted my friend Ruben, and I need to stay in Los Angeles to continue to wash Lionel Richie's cars. You must take me." And to their credit, I think, they did, under one condition, that I would enroll in remedial English. It was an embarrassment to start college in remedial English. But they let me in with only 2 days to go. And all the popular classes, history, psychology, poli-sci, were oversubscribed. What's the one class that was wide open because it scared everybody else? A moral philosophy class. But I would have flunked history. I couldn't skim 500 pages, but philosophy rewards you for reading just 10 pages deeply and more deeply and more deeply. And I found myself. Frameworks and words and languages. The kid that I was, obsessed with right and wrong and how the world works and the human condition, started to find great teachers and philosophers to give meaning and significance and language to my entire life. And I learned to read and write. And all the skills that I now have, I never set out to develop these skills. These skills are a pure byproduct of a tenacious love affair with ideas and a tenacious love affair with a quest for truth, inspired and encouraged by loving teachers who would make all the time in the world for me in their office hours. One of the things that I did in philosophy was really think spatially about the world, nothing linear. And I became fascinated with revolutions. Fascinated with revolutions. Because as we all know, we live in revolutionary times. The word disruption is just another word for revolution. And revolutions are always about 3 things. They're always about overthrowing something in the status quo. Revolutions are always about ideas and ideals. But at their core, revolutions are about freedom. Freedom from something. And we now live in a world, we talk about inequality of opportunity and inequality of income. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a deeper inequality. I call it an inequality of freedom. 80 million Egyptian citizens achieved freedom from Mubarak. And then they got the Egyptian military and they got freedom from them. People got freedom from Gaddafi. Amazon gives us freedom from the neighborhood store. TiVo, freedom from networks forcing us to watch commercials, right? Donors choose, right? Freedom from state funding. Newton, freedom from one size fits all. MOOCs, freedom from having to be in a classroom at a certain time. Chat rooms, freedom from micromanaging bosses. I could go on, but we have never lived in a time where people can cast off formal top-down authority. And if you look at it through this lens, we are creating unprecedented levels of freedom from hierarchy, traditional authority, and command and control. Freedom from is created by toppling things. But the freedom in our Constitution is freedom to pursue a happy life. Academic freedom is not freedom from. It's freedom to ask a dumb question in a classroom. It's freedom to fail. It's freedom to be yourself. It's freedom to be curious. The freedom that we cherish in a universalistic democratic society is not freedom from and freedom to. But now we have all these people around the world who are experiencing freedom from, and only now that they know that they've got freedom from autocracy, they're saying, but am I really free to be, say, do, innovate, create, etc., etc.? The challenge of our time is to scale corporate environments, classroom environments, communal environments where people are free to. This notion of Delacroix, La Liberté, was so influential to me that when I founded LRN 20 years ago and raised money from shareholders who believed in me, I had it repainted as my more constructive revolution of right over wrong. It's politically correct. We covered up Lady Liberty. But my idea was to democratize knowledge, because in a universalistic capitalist society, we don't know where the next Thomas Jefferson is lurking and the next Thomas Edison is lurking. But if we give people the rules of the road, how to behave, how to think, how to relate to others, then anybody has a shot at their dreams. And as Christina said, today I'm proud to run a company with moral philosophy adorning every conference room. We are a mission with a business, and I think we now live in a world where more missions with businesses are going to see the light of day. Educational environments, as we all know, are about ideas. So I thought I would bring with you just one idea. And I'm going to come at this idea from a few different places and angles. I'm going to argue. I'm going to tell you some stories. I might even give you some statistics. But I really have just one idea. And let me start by illustrating this idea with two stories. How many of you have flown Southwest Airlines? The single most successful airline in U.S. history, however turbulent the skies or the industry is, they keep soaring and making profits. When they were founded about 45 years ago, Herb Kelleher, their founder, their CEO said, "I am not in charge." What a profound thing to say 40 years ago. We are going to create a culture where everybody's in charge. And to show you what this looks like today, I landed in Las Vegas on a Southwest Airlines flight not too long ago. And when the plane came to the gate, the flight attendant with passion and elan came through the loudspeaker and said, "Passengers, we have done research at Southwest Airlines that before you deplane, if each and every one of you will simply turn around and cross your seatbelts one over the other, you will have good luck at the gambling tables." We laughed, as you just did, but we did it. Now, there's a federal regulation that the next plane can't take off until seatbelts are passed. Through how she connected with us, we are effectuating compliance with law on behalf of her company. It also turns out that they turned their planes around 6 minutes faster than their nearest rival. How many minutes would it have taken her in this low-cost environment to go up and down the aisles and do it herself? 6 minutes. Through how she connected with us, we are now delivering competitive advantage to their airline. They also make a brand promise: home on time, no frills, safe and fun. Well, that's what I experienced, including the fun. So I had consonance, not dissonance, and my loyalty to the airline deepened. But the moral of the story is there is no manual that instructs her to tell the gambling story when you land in Las Vegas. She does not get paid extra to do that. But even more importantly, she is free to contribute her character and creativity, and there is no fear that if her joke falls flat, that someone's going to report her to a supervisor and punish her. They let people understand the mission and contribute something. And some things work and some things don't, but we all know about the journey they're on. Let's go to Michigan. The University of Michigan health system was being sued increasingly for medical malpractice, like many hospitals around the country. Their doctor said, "What business are we in? We are in the humanity business. We're here to heal people. And every time we harm a patient, the human thing to do is to reconnect with a genuine apology." What do you think their lawyer said to them? You're laughing because you know the lawyer said, "Absolutely not." So they had a big debate about this. And the doctors had the courage of their convictions, and they started to routinely apologize when they harmed a patient. Their lawsuits and their payouts went down by 50%. Other hospitals around the country started to emulate this practice, and now 38 United States of America have passed legislation that apologies can no longer be held against you in the court of law. This act of values-based leadership has created a wave and changed society. Now, if you go to a doctor and say, "Research shows that if you apologize, you get sued less," and the doctor says, "Good, nice to know, I'm going to start apologizing to get sued less," research shows you get sued more. Because it has to come from the heart. So the doctor said, "We're only going to apologize when we are wrong, but when we are right, we are going to fight because we're going to respect ourselves." And they created an ecosystem of the best students wanting to work at this hospital. They started to apologize to each other about being late for meetings, and their health care outcomes increased because they started with their values and translated into behaviors that made a difference and changed their entire community. My first question to you is, would the world be a better place if more employees and more leaders behaved in this way, connected in this way, made a difference in this way? Yes? Really? Yes? Okay, I agree. Sadly, we have work to do. These stories are still the exception to the rule. And there's many ways in which I can argue that these don't happen every day. Maybe you don't experience them yourselves every day. But I think you would agree with me that people only behave this way when their heart's in the game. They care. They have deep beliefs, yes? Well, people aren't caring right now because 7 out of 10 employees throughout the United States and Europe and around the world are disengaged on the job. 2 out of these 7 are so disengaged they are sabotaging their company. They are on Facebook saying nasty things. The biggest business problem of our age is a human problem. People don't care. They don't have meaning. We talk about a jobs crisis. This is a careers crisis. People with a job not flying out of bed, releasing discretionary effort to create jobs for their brothers and sisters and uncles and cousins, because people with jobs are leaning out. Is this not some form of leadership malpractice to have so many people in this mode? And you think it's just employees? Consumers are not engaged, citing broken promises. Citizens are not engaged. Very few trust government. They think government is a greater danger to our country than terrorists. It's true. And students are disengaged. Whatever hat you wear, if you're a student, a citizen, a consumer, an employee, the world is getting more and more connected, yet people are disconnected. What an irony. So before we go forward and ask, why are we so disengaged? Let's talk about the environment in which this is all happening. As a student of philosophy, I think it all began with Adam Smith. He wrote The Wealth of Nations. We scaled our markets. We scaled our business environment based on the wealth of nations. How many of you were taught that Adam Smith was an economist? Adam Smith was the chairman of the moral philosophy department at Glasgow University when he wrote The Wealth of Nations. He was not doing economics. He actually never used the word capitalism. He talked about creating a system of liberties, a system of freedom too, and it was a moral system. The more trust there was, the more people were free to innovate without the fear that someone's going to take their ideas, their intellectual property, etc., etc. He understood that if you want dynamism and innovation, you have to create an underlying human operating system animated by values and shared values. Yes, with some controls and some lines you don't cross and some oversight, but ultimately it was a moral system. And instead of scaling the father of capitalism, we embraced a different father of capitalism, the Godfather. How many of you have seen this movie at least 3 times? 5 times. Throw out some of the most famous lines from this movie. Come on. Regale us. Offer you can't refuse. What else? Leave the gun, take the cannoli. How about it's not personal, it's just business? Let me tell you something. If we can create a separate sphere that's just personal, then just do it, I don't care how, too big to fail, my way or the highway. Greed is good. These are rational strategies. There's nothing wrong with these strategies if we can agree that there's another sphere over there called just business. And if we want to go to funerals and hear that he was a jerk at work but a loving husband and a ruthless negotiator and a caring father, then this works. It was always philosophically misguided, but the world is not cooperating today. Generation X and Y and millennials, they have one email address and one Facebook account. This work-life, personal, private distinction that we've erected is illusory, always was. And in a world that's just business, it's not an immoral world, it's an amoral world, just business. And in amoral worlds, technical skills, you become a manager, not a leader. You just get good at getting things done any which way. But in a world where everything is social and personal, how you do things and how you relate to others starts to matter like never before. David Hume said that the moral imagination diminishes with distance. It would follow as a corollary that as distance decreases, the moral imagination must increase. The world is getting smaller and our moral imagination is being activated. But it's being activated in the extreme. We're experiencing moral outrage. We can't differentiate naked pictures of a celebrity from insight into pay disparities between men and women in Hollywood. It's all coming at us, and we are in 1 or we're at 10. But what I'm saying is we are morally aroused, because when the world gets small, our moral imagination gets large. Students started a revolution towards freedom throughout the entire Middle East. We have never lived in a time where a few people can make history, record history, publicize history, and amplify history. Where one vegetable vendor and 7 friends armed with cell phone cameras can start a revolution. We've never lived in a time where one banker can lose $2 billion trading at his desk with a click. We have never lived in a time where so few can affect so many, so far away, so profoundly, like never before. We've never lived in a time where an app can take virtual strangers and put them in our cars, in our homes, and in our hotel rooms. Strangers in intimate relationship with us, never before. We are not just connected, we are not just interconnected, we are interdependent. And interdependence is a moral reality. I affect you, you affect me, we rise and fall together, and leaders have to frame their environment with the right terms. Interdependence is the world, in my view, that we now live. When the internet started, there were 6,000 give or take protests. A couple of years ago, there were almost 250,000 protests. This is not just a phenomena among citizens and vegetable vendors and bankers. The coming corporate revolution. When did we think that Forbes would publish covers like this? You know what every one of these iconic brands has in common? Everyone was forced within a 48-hour period to 1 week to do a 180, to discontinue a launch, to change a policy. Remember Netflix about 4 years ago? They thought, wow, we're doing well. How about a little price increase? 800,000 of their subscribers in 48 hours bolted. When was the last time you saw 800,000 people engage in collective action in unison? And Reed Hastings, their founder, paused and he said, what just happened to us? We have been arrogant. I'm quoting him. We engaged in one-way conversations. Let's go on a journey to reconnect with our marketplace. And they started to do that with humility and thoughtfully, and today they're winning Emmys. Because in an interconnected world, how you come back from mistakes and how you say you're sorry is also a currency. Paul Pullman, the CEO of Unilever, they reach 2 billion people a day. I had lunch with him a couple of years ago, and he sat with me and said, Dov, I'd like you to help me with something. I've been thinking that it took them 17 days to get rid of Mubarak. And Mubarak had a military. I don't have tanks at Unilever. What if my customers and our consumers don't like how we behave? What should we do? And let's put this in the context where half the world's population are under 30, and they want to talk to Unilever, not about soap, but how are you making soap that's getting more children to reach the age of 5? And they don't want to talk about Dove as a brand. They want to talk about what Dove is doing to self-esteem among women. They want deep conversations. And speaking of this next generation under 30, this is Martha Payne. She's 12 years old today. I encountered her when she was 9. She's a British schoolgirl, and she did not like the food in her school. I know that British cuisine's a bit of an oxymoron, but she did not like the food because she thought it wasn't nutritious. So she convinced her father to let her bring his camera, and she started to photograph the food and start to blog about it. What do you think the school did? Went to the school board and got formal permission to shut her down. Academic freedom? So Jamie Oliver, the famous chef, rallied behind her, and 1 million people started to connect with her. They reversed their policy. They are serving nutritious food today. Children all over the world are doing the same thing, and they started a foundation which raises extra money for malnutrition kids in Malawi. Not bad, 9 years old, having a two-way conversation with formal authority. This is a trend. Rowan Hansen didn't think there were enough female heroes in DC Comics, and Julia Bloom got 17 magazine to stop photoshopping all pictures. And Sarah Kavanaugh got Coca-Cola through Gatorade to remove an ingredient of color. And one young boy said, I'm not just going to root for the NFL team in my neighborhood. He wrote a letter to all 32 teams and said, you tell me why I should root for you. True. And he got letters from owners, and that's how he picked his team. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the era of behavior, and I know what you're thinking. Hasn't behavior always mattered? Of course it did. When I say the era of behavior, I'm saying it matters now more than ever and in ways it never has before. And when I say behavior, I know we tell a child to behave. I don't mean just behave. And I know we talk about good behavior. He was let out of prison early for good behavior, something defensive. Every tweet is a behavior. Every post is a behavior. To collaborate is to behave. Innovation is a behavior. Creativity is a behavior. All the ways in which people and teams and organizations personify and manifest, that's what I mean by behavior. The ways in which we connect, relate, communicate, do, and not do. Behavior. Now, when you're in a new era, I keep hearing the word reform. Let's reform education. After the financial crisis, we need to reform our markets. Einstein said, never reform when you're in a new era. Have the courage to rethink. If you're in a new era, don't tinker at the margins and reform. If you're in a new era, you've got to discard thinking that animated decision-making in the prior era and rethink. And I think education needs to be rethought, not reformed. For the rest of my time with you, I could give you a reform speech or a rethink speech. Who wants a reform speech? Who wants a rethink speech? All right. And I assume you want a rethink speech because you're connecting with this idea that the world is not just changing, it's being reshaped, right? So let's rethink two things. And the first is my idea. We love words in the education context. Look at what we've done with the word how. How are you, buddy? How's it going? How do I get from here to there? We've treated how as an adverb. We love nouns. We love things because I can win with things. And we've treated how as just some adverb, like window dressing on the noun. A tactic. How do I get from A to B? So what if how were not just a question? How much? You were an answer. What if how were a noun because it stood for an ethic of human endeavor, a lens through which we look at the world, for a way in which we relate to others and lead? Because if how is an answer, I'm going to go get me something, and I'm going to get a good answer, and I'm going to win with it. So my one rethink is, what if we took how we did things and we invested energy and resources in building up some how muscle and didn't just denigrate it to something tactical or a means to an end? That's my rethink. And if you embrace that how can be an answer and not just a question, then through that lens, I'd like to rethink two things. The first is behavior itself. These words are in the dictionary. Do you know why? Because they've hit the standard of inclusion in the dictionary. They are part of common vernacular. How does a word become part of common vernacular? It commonly describes how we think and behave. We outfox, we outsmart, we outcompete, we even outdrink, and outsmart, and outmaneuver. And the business world has been obsessed with outproducing and outperforming. Do you know that the word outbehave is not in the dictionary? It's true. The very idea that we can bring excellence to our behavior, that we could be intentional about our behavior, the very idea that behavior is a source of competitive advantage and not just that which keeps us out of jail, is still a new idea. So the first rethink is, what if behavior is not just something a goalkeeper does, but it's what all 11 players or the offensive team does to score goals, to engender trust, to keep promises so consistently that you create such a reputational currency that your dreams and aspirations become real reality. How many of you have traveled here and there are wheels on your suitcase? I've got wheels on mine. It's an amazing behavioral invention. Instead of carrying suitcases, we wheel them. We can be on our phones and walk through these gigantic airports. It's a real simple behavioral change. Why did it take 20 years for the companies who innovated in this behavior to succeed? You know why? Anybody want to guess? The problem is men. Men said only women would be caught dead in an airport wheeling their suitcases. So they resisted. It's true. We didn't change their attitudes. We just told them rationally why they should wheel and not carry. But we didn't change their definition of what masculinity is about. Attitudes held us back. And the economy today is amazing at shifting people. You watch a political attack ad, you vote left, not right. 30 seconds later, you put a product on sale, you buy now, not later, more, not less. That's why we're obsessed with nudging people, getting them to stay in the library longer and work harder and show up earlier and work longer days. We're constantly shifting people, left, right, forward, back, more, not less. Will some of you just name some of the behaviors that we want from students, from employees, from people out there? Just name some capacities and qualities and behaviors that we want more of. Inquisitive. What else? Persistent. What? Empathy. Creative. I heard kindness. Grit. Ethical. Humility. You know, you think you could go to two employees and say, you two go in a room and do not emerge until you learn how to respect and collaborate with each other, especially from different cultures. And if you don't develop some empathy, you're out of here. You could triple people's salaries. You could coerce them all you want, and not any of the things that you said we need would happen. Think of that. Everybody wants qualities and capacities from people that if you triple their salaries, there's no amount of carrots and not enough sticks that you could get. And if you look at what the largest study of CEOs conducted recently reveals, CEOs want collaboration, communication, creativity, flexibility. We are not just in the era of behavior. Look at what I'm about to do. We are in the era of elevated behavior. We don't want to shift people. We want to elevate people. And what elevates people is a journey and a mission and a purpose worthy of their loyalty and dedication. Values elevate people. Rules just shift people left to right, staying within lines. We know where people get elevated. They get elevated in church and synagogue. They get elevated in hobbies, in their dreams. But in the real world, we stopped elevating people. We shifted them. And now, for the first time, from a classroom to a boardroom to a factory floor, we don't want people to show up and be quasi-robotic and put the widget in the same thing over and over again as though they're an industrial robot. We want people to be people. And that's what we're asking for. And the World Economic Forum did the largest study of educational skills that will be required in the 21st century. It came out on March 16, and they broke it into 3 categories. And the competencies and the character qualities are deeply human qualities for whom and which you cannot shift, but you must only elevate. And you know what it said about the ed tech community? It said the ed tech community is predominantly focused on the foundational literacies and leaving a massive vacuum. They're not bringing yet their innovation to the other 2 more important categories of competencies and characterological qualities. We keep hiring for talent, relevant knowledge, regressively, based on something somebody did 5 years ago. How about a 5-minute video where you tell us about your hopes and aspirations and what you want your eulogy to say, and why where you're taking your life and where I'm taking my company have to be in a marriage? And today, people's reputation arrives at a company before their resume does and before they do. And whatever your GPA does, we're watching people on Twitter, and we want to see the person, the character, because Heraclitus said, character is your fate or your destiny, not your GPA. The best way to put this distinction before you is the distinction between doing that which you have a right to do and that which is right to do. Or doing the next thing right versus the next right thing. We used to live in a world where one football coach told the whole team, that's the play we're running. And where one teacher said, this is the assignment. And one general said, that's the hill we're going to conquer. And a CEO and 5 vice presidents would say, this is our vision and strategy, everybody else executes. In that world, it's about doing the next thing right. Very few people tell everybody where we're going, and everybody else needs the skills and the will to do the next thing right. But in a world that's flat and social and horizontal, where everybody is tweeting and participating and trying to create value and making decisions and trying to delight and enrich customers' lives, where everybody is acting, everybody has to lead. We grew up in a world where leaders were either born into power or they were made by somebody else saying, here's your vice president title. Martha Payne is a self-made leader. And today, and you know what it said on her blog? If you go back on Martha Payne's blog, she says, I am a future workforce leader. Today, companies want to hire people who don't just do the next thing right, but understand what it means to do the next right thing. They don't want people who just think in terms of what they can and cannot do, but what they should and should not do. And this is what companies are looking for today. Should-minded and should-inspired people. Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. If there's no spirit and values, what are we infusing and informing our technical and tactical and skills? I'm not making a choice. I think there needs to be a fusion and a marriage between technology and science and engineering and human beings. The doctors knew disease. The doctors knew science. They knew medicine. But it was their empathy that changed everybody's lives. You know, when you hit a pause button on a computer, you stop the computer. When a human being pauses, we don't stop anything. We start. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that in the pause, I hear the call. Only a human being has the capacity to pause and think about the consequences and ramifications of our actions and behaviors. Whether you're a teacher, a leader, a student, the ability to pause in this FOMO, fear of missing out, always on, blaring assault of emails and texts, we are shutting off the most important thing that human beings have, the ability to pause and think and reconnect with our values and to reimagine a better future. Leaders today create environments where people pause. To do the next thing right, I don't need to pause. To do the next right thing, I have to pause a lot and pause thoughtfully. If I had to sum up the world that I think we're in, I think we are left the industrial age where we hired hands. And then we entered the knowledge economy where we hired heads. But big data and artificial intelligence, we are starting to get outcalculated. Machines are starting to outthink us. I think that we are starting to exit even the knowledge economy, and we are entering the human economy. The human economy, where our ability to use the machines makes sense of data, because big data does not mean big answers. It's the human piece of this that I think is at the cornerstone of prosperity. Now, have you noticed that Chevron is the human energy company, and Dow is the human element, and Cisco is the human network, and Samsung is designed for human and human flourishing, and we speak human? We chuckle, but marketing departments are geniuses at putting their finger on the social nerve and pulse. They know where the world is going, and they're trying to take their companies there. That's what they get paid to do. Look at Nokia, the most human phone ever. This recent Super Bowl, be more human. One organization after another is saying, work here, buy from us, invest in us because of our humanity, who we are. And I know what you're thinking. There's a difference between proclaiming humanity and translating that proclamation into corporate practices, leadership, and individual behaviors. But someone had to kick us off and catalyze the right journey. And it's these marketing departments saying we're in a human economy, and we are going to give you the business of business is no longer just business. And we don't get out of bed every day, because I've never met an employee who gets out of bed to only produce shareholder value. The business of business is human endeavor to do things in the world in a right and proper, profitable way, and that's how we're going to get paid. Anybody know what the #1 term searched in Merriam-Webster's dictionary last year was? Take a guess. What? Come on, take a guess. I'll have a sip of water while you're guessing. Sex. Next. And it wasn't selfie or twerking. It was culture. Culture. You know, when someone gets sexually assaulted on campus, we don't ask anymore who let this student in here. We go, what's with fraternity culture? When a policeman beats up somebody, we don't go, who mistrained this cop? We say, what's up with police culture? Because what makes us human is the ability to create culture, beliefs, attitudes, norms that are passed generation from generation. And we now live in a time where nobody is accepting superficial, shallow, limited definitions of phenomena. They are saying something deep is at work here, culture. So if we're in a human economy, we have to foster Context. Leaders are getting out of giving you the answer, and they're getting into the business of creating cultures and context where everybody knows that there's a right way to do things here. Culture. Last year, Michael Crow, the president of ASU, said the solution change was culture change. I think that was prescient and profound. You know, how come we always ask entrepreneurs, how are you going to scale your business? How are you going to scale the model, your products? When do we ask entrepreneurs how they're going to scale their values? That's the question you have to ask. How are we going to scale values? Because business are the masters at scaling things. We love to do things at scale, especially in the United States. And to do things at scale, we need two things: a system and metrics. In companies, we go, I trust you to innovate, and the person runs off to innovate. Then they got to get 4 signatures to spend $6 to innovate. If you love your company, go on Facebook and defend us when we're attacked, and then the social media policy from the compliance department is don't you dare go on Facebook. We talk about trust in the classroom, and then a student gets up in the middle of the exam to go to a bathroom, and someone follows him there as though his intent is to go there to cheat. We have created dissonance and schizophrenia because we have an industrial operating system of carrots and sticks, and we haven't scaled our values by creating a harmonious set of governance practices, leadership practices, and values that come together. I embrace the notion that we manage what we measure and that what we measure is what we get. We have to measure. We have to score keep. It's great. But if you pause, you will realize that metrics don't come down from on high. We choose our metrics. And when we measure something, we're saying it matters. And when we don't measure something, we're saying it doesn't matter. So therefore, metrics are a window into what we value and into our values. And we are amazing at how much metrics. We spend 2 years debating how much stimulus do we need in the stimulus package, $1 trillion, $1.2 trillion, etc. Did we talk about how to stimulate the economy? Just how big the package should be. How many friends, how many followers, how many clicks, GPA. Now, these metrics matter. But in a social, horizontal, interconnected world, don't you think we need to measure the how as well? How loyal, how trusting, how collaborative, how exciting, how engaged? We looked at 2 million observations of behavior from 36,000 people in 18 countries. And we did statistical analysis in the last few years on the how. Values-based behavior, levels of inspiration, over-coercion, etc. And it turned out that there are very few truly human companies, but I'm not surprised. The proclamation of humanity has just begun. But what's holding us back are gaps between CEOs and the average worker who's trying to get the job done. Most CEOs already think and experience a human company at 27% relative to only 3% worldwide. 27% experience inspiration, but only 4% of everybody else does. 46% admit that they coerce people, but 84% experience that. So my last rethink, if we have a leadership gap, should we rethink leadership? Yes? I've been doing that a lot lately when I became a parent. A lot of people, yes, I went through the blood sport of trying with my wife Maria to get him into the right school in New York City, and I've been obsessed with education. But frankly, I'm more obsessed with, if he works at a company one day, what kind of a company is he going to work at? And what kind of leader is he going to be? Are we building institutions worthy of my son and daughter? That's how I'm thinking about it, not just education, but from a leadership perspective. He started to parallel process and double task. German, that's the German edition. Spanish, it's important, especially in this part of the world. You know, the other day, when he was 5, allegedly, according to him, I left for work and I did not kiss him goodbye. So my phone rings, and it's my son, Lev. By the way, his name is Lev Tov. Lev is heart and Tov is good. We named him Good Heart. And his mother immigrated from the Ukraine, so Lev is also lion. So I believe that he needs to be good-hearted and lion-hearted, those two together, to thrive in the world, so we named him that. But he called me up and he said, and I expected him to be upset with me. Daddy, I'm upset with you. You didn't call me. I'm mad at you. You didn't say goodbye. You know what he says? Instead of being emotive and emotional, he says, Daddy, it's Lev, and I have a question for you. What kind of father does not kiss his son? It's true. A very sorry father. It's a true story. And he's doing to his sister, evidently, what I'm Socratically doing to him, because he's giving it back. But I've been really obsessed. She's not having much of it. Think of a leader that inspires you and throw out some qualities that you think these leaders have. What? What? Love. What else? Integrity. Passion. Trusting. Risk taker. Humility. Intelligence. Yeah. You see where we're going? Do you think if we tripled the salaries of these leaders, you're going to get more humility? You might even get the opposite. How about love? We want elevated qualities from our leaders too. Elevation. The leader that inspires me the most is Crazy George Henderson. I've always been fascinated with the wave, because how do 50,000 people in a stadium get up? It's never the CEO in the crowd. It's never the richest people in the crowd. It's always four guys with one too many beers. And they can get a stadium to rock, to go around and around so powerfully in an unbroken wave of human energy that if you came to root for the other team, you still stand up to help the other team. And I've studied waves. They don't happen in high school football stadiums where one side roots against the other. They don't. They happen in transparent oval stadiums. I called up Crazy George Henderson because in 1981, it was not 86 Mexico City World Cup, La Ola. The wave started in 81 in the United States. It was human innovation in the United States. He got 46,000 people in the Oakland A's against Yankees Game 3 to stand up and rock that stadium. And I got to know him, and I had a deep conversation with him. I said, did you walk up to people and say, if you don't stand up, I'm going to punch you? Those people were safe outside his reach way over there. Did you motivate the wave? Here's $5, here's $5. No. Were you secretive about the wave? I'd like you to stand up, but only I know why. That doesn't work either. Did you do it without passion? Please get up if you feel like it. No, I'd rather eat my popcorn. Everything about a wave is about how. Because a wave, in physics, is energy. In a stadium, it's human energy. It's an inspired act, and when it goes around a few times, you actually forget who started it. It's everybody's wave. Every email is a wave. Every test, every classroom encounter, every encounter in an office hour, every negotiation, every memo, every customer experience. The Southwest Airlines flight attendant created a wave. I'm telling her story still. We now live in a wave-making world. Waves. Now, we cannot get anything done without power. Principals have power. CEOs and vice presidents have power. We need authority. You cannot have a world without power and authority. What I'm saying is that formal authority, do this because I'm your dad, as we can tell in my life, or do this because this is my classroom, or do this because I fill out your performance evaluation at the end of the year. Formal authority is dissipating and decaying. It doesn't work anymore. You could put an aircraft carrier outside of any shore, and it doesn't have any bearing on Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Formal authority, do this because we're bigger than you and I've got something over you, is losing all of its currency, power over people. But Nelson Mandela in his pinky had more authority in his hospital bed on his deathbed than most people in formal authority. We are moving to a world of moral authority. Do this because it's right. It makes sense. We share something together, and this is how we ought to live. It's about waves and power through people. Michael, yesterday you put up some football coaches. One of the things I'd like to point out, if you go back about 15 years and come back 8 years, every one of these coaches won the Super Bowl. And every one of them is scowling. They are known to be command and control coaches. Known to be command and control coaches. These are the last 8 that won. Tony Dungy wrote a book about faith in the locker room and quiet strength. There has not been a championship in football, in basketball, World Cup soccer. There has not been a major championship in sports in the last 5 years where a traditional command and control stereotypical coach has achieved that. There's that much parity and talent parity that it's about something human. It's the coach that doesn't see the players as an X or an O or just a player, but a full human being and visits the players in their homes when they become fathers and mothers. These are the coaches that are winning. The connectors and the collaborators, no more command and control. It's a massive trend. And you're now starting to see CEOs publicly, I'm not saying that they're icons or beacons, but they're publicly saying that they're on a journey. I want to kill command and control. I've got to end command and control. Ginny Rometty at IBM, bless you, does not say, here's my strategy. Ask me what I believe. And in the education space, Superintendent of the Year last year, Alberto Covajo, and it's been a privilege for my company and me to do a lot of meaningful work in the Miami-Dade County School, and he's probably going to talk tomorrow about principle-based budgeting. But this, and Sir Ken Robinson, leaders in education that I admire, that are talking about top-down command and control forms of authority being the last and worst example for students. If there's ever a time where you might want to take a note, it would be on this slide. Let's make it simple. There's only 3 ways to get another human being to do something. You can coerce them, motivate them, or inspire them. Coercion and motivation are outside of you. They happen to you. They extract something from you: loyalty, allegiance, hard work. And if you give somebody 8 carrots, you're going to get 8 parts motivation. And I've never seen employees share their bonus. My carrots are my carrots. I believe that carrots and sticks have their place. We should pay people more and more and more, and fairly. There need to be fireable offenses. And things should happen that can get you expelled from a school. But the fear of being fired or expelled should blend into the woodwork and be there. Because what coercion and motivation do is they shift behavior. And we do need to shift behavior. People should work more, not less. If they want to be good at something, they should practice. I've got nothing against carrots and sticks. They have their rightful place. But we need to make a cocktail of coercion and motivation and inspiration, because only inspiration elevates. Because the first 2 letters in the word inspiration are in. Inspiration doesn't happen to you, it happens in you. And what's in us? Beliefs, hopes, dreams, aspirations, values, missions, visions. Leaders today have to connect in people together, or they're not going to inspire them. And the task is to create this right cocktail of coercion, motivation, and inspiration. The United States military, they really do need to train skills, because life and death is on the line. And recently, the drill sergeants, who are known to be the most dictatorial, started to experiment with this how inspirational approach. And they put 2 groups, and in this one, they yelled at you, "What's the matter with you? My mother can do better than this." And it took them 80 bullets to zero a rifle. And in the more collaborative approach, they got it down to 35. And they started doing this more and more as part of the Victory College, so much so that they have formally changed their crest in Fort Jackson. Amateurs, who we don't want to be, they motivate. But professionals inspire. Because we're roaming the world where we need to show respect in villages to local citizens and earn their trust to really achieve even military outcomes. How many of you want progress? Yeah, let's make this simple. Well, to have progress, we got to innovate, right? We got to do something different this Tuesday than last Tuesday. We need IP, ideas, innovation, to have progress. When does progress happen? What precedes progress? Creativity, what else? Failure? Related, risk. Every time someone's in a meeting with me, they're taking the risk that I might judge them. When we spend money, we're taking the risk of not getting a return. There is no innovation, whether we're aware of it or not, that is not enabled by and preceded by risk-taking. Asking a question in a classroom, somebody is taking a risk of being judged. Now, so far, I've spelled rest in peace. Because if you want this, we need trust. In a high-trust environment, we keep having innovation initiatives, and they hit walls. Most corporate innovation initiatives fail. They fail because we haven't created a high-trust environment that people can take the risk necessary. Almost all innovation initiatives fail because we're working them at the innovation level, at the app level. Bill Gates won with Word, not because it was better than WordPerfect. He built Windows. And when he had Windows, Word plus Excel plus PowerPoint, etc., worked together for a large idea, worker productivity and everybody having a computer. If we want all these killer apps, these new elevated behaviors, we got to get the human operating system that is trust-enabled and inspired. There was a guy who sold donuts for a living. I encountered him and wrote about him. The guy across the street sold donuts for a living. But they could have had a donut war. They could buy each other's donuts, go home, reverse engineer them, price them the same, make them equally delicious. You know what this guy does? He puts a tray of loose change, and he says to his customers, I'm going to stand over here and talk to you and deliver a rich experience. Make your own change. He started to outsell his competition 3-1. He innovated in how he extended trust and created an ecology around his donut stand, because if someone took too much change, somebody else said, not here, buddy, don't spoil the fun. The rock band Radiohead trusted their fans to pay what they thought the music was worth in their 5th album and made more money on that album than when they put a price on it. In Indonesia, there's so much corruption in the country, they didn't have enough police, so they augmented the coercive approach by launching honesty cafes and cantinas at schools where they taught boys and girls to take food off the shelves and citizens. And instead of going to a cashier and having an interaction, go to a jar and make your own change, teaching honesty and probity early in life. Do you know that trust is a legal, performance-enhancing drug? When somebody trusts you, a neuromodulator in your brain is released, oxytocin, and whatever makes you leery and scared subsides, and you reciprocate that trust by leaning in, by embracing and extending trust reciprocally. Trust is a legal, natural, performance-enhancing drug. So much so that in high-trust environments, you don't get 22% more. You get 22x. Think of that. It's a game changer, 22x of the right kind of risk-taking, because if you have the right vision and mission in mind, you're only going to take the risk that furthers it, and you get 22x that risk, which leads to 8 times innovation and financial performance. It's a legal drug that makes you money. Everything I've been talking about, hold up your iPhones or whatever your devices are. Those are human innovation. Human beings. Amazing human beings created human innovation. All of these things, all of these apps, all the amazing things that the ed tech community is doing, especially, I call human innovation. Human innovation. But what I'm talking to you about today is innovation in humanity. Different ways to teach. What if we don't teach people? We create an environment where they're inspired to learn. This is about innovating in how we run schools and how we run companies and how we govern and how we lead. Let's not just do human innovation. Let's take our innovation ethic and agenda and energy and apply it to innovating in how we do things, not just in what we make and create. As I start to wrap up, is it fair to say that if we were to try to scale some of these notions and ideas, it would feel like a journey? Yes? Do you agree with me that life's a journey? Yes. Why? Why? I know it feels like a trite, shallow question, but let's think about it. Is life a journey? Yeah. Why? Yeah. You can't decide where you want to go next. You zig, you zag. You go up and down, like our health, our friendships, our marriages. Life's a journey because they're curvilinear. They go up and down. And you know what business and the education industry became obsessed with? Linearity. If you went to Jack Welch 15 years ago at GE and said, listen, boss, we are going to dominate and win, but the next 5 years, our plan is to go up and down, he would fire you. We become obsessed with linearity. Every score we want more of has to go only up. It never gets to go up and down. So we say life's a journey, we go up and down. But business, education, that's not a journey. Linearity. We have plans, and we're going to superimpose budgets and thoughts and plans and goals, and every score we want is going to be linear, and linearity is killing us because we live in an up and down curvilinear world. When we landed on the moon, DuPont made 24 out of 25 of Neil Armstrong's elements in a spacesuit. DuPont employees were not implementing and executing. They were helping put a man on the moon, not just to walk on the moon, because they were enlisted in the large idea that a technological scientific renaissance would be spawned by that journey. And isn't it interesting that one CEO after another, in terms of the trend lines, is saying we're on a journey? Because defining the path ahead as a journey, because when it's a journey, you start to emphasize resiliency. You measure progress, not just bottom lines. You figure out a way to do things together. Journey is an ethic. It's a way of living. It's a way of pursuing things. And if business and life have merged and fused, then business and education and all of our commercial endeavors are also there to be journeyed. Secretary Arne Duncan will be addressing us and sharing wisdom with us. And I really appreciate and admire, but we're on our journey. This is a great country. Even as I say this is a great country, perhaps some politicians aren't being straight with us and some innocent people are going to jail. What makes us great is the journey to perfect our union. It's the endeavor. When we're aspirational, we're great. And journeys have one more quality. When I did some teaching, I noticed that I was giving B's to people who did a basically good job. And I gave A's to the students who were just magical, but they pushed themselves and they brought things from they could almost teach the class. But my C students, and I was teaching political theory and philosophy, highly notional and amorphous material. My C students were the most interesting. I had a bunch of C students who were A students who got confused. They had those qualities that I saw in the A students, but they didn't go all the way. But that's why journeys are paradoxical, because do you see how a C is closer to an A than a B? There are a lot of people out there in the valley of C. They're going for it, but they're in the valley of C. And journeys are paradoxical. There are teams, institutions, students. I was one of them. I spent almost 18 years in the valley of confusion. I was trying. Journeys are paradoxical. Leaders cannot avoid the valley of C. Our only responsibility is to not wallow there, to not be stuck there. It's to help people through there. And this, I believe, is the journey we are on, from shift to elevate, can to should, how much to how, moral authority, inspire, and giving trust away. I said journeys are paradoxical. Aristotle taught us the paradox of happiness, that if you pursue happiness, it will elude us. But if you do something meaningful to you, that gives you a sense of self that matters, you create the freedom for happiness to find you. The corollary to that is the paradox of success. As we see every day, when you pursue success, especially conventionally defined, it eludes us. But if you pursue significance, being other-regarding, making a difference, creating human progress, prosperity, giving people opportunity, anytime we do something of significance, and Michael and Deborah, I believe that the vision, 2020 vision, is a journey of significance, not just success. I truly do. When you pursue significance, success can find you. The greatest capitalist manifestation of this was the Johnson & Johnson Credo. It was their compass that they still use today. They have good days and bad days. They do good things and fewer bad things. But this says, let's make the world a healthier place. Let's make the world a healthier place. But we're capitalists. Money's in the equation. But you notice it says, and General Johnson wrote this when he wanted to scale his values. They went public. He was the only shareholder at the time. He said, if we live according to these principles, our shareholders should make a fair return. Leaders have to say to people and inspire them, let's do this because it makes a difference, and we will make money, but let's not do this in order to make money. There's a lot of nuance here. But the difference between doing something of significance and making money versus doing something in order to make money is dramatically profound. The former inspires and engages people, and the latter does not. So leaders need to scale journeys that are about doing things and succeeding, but not doing things in order to succeed. If you walk up to two bricklayers and you say to them, what are you doing? It all depends on how they see themselves when they look in the mirror. One guy says, it's obvious, I'm laying brick. The other guy says, it's obvious, I'm building a cathedral. When you see yourself in larger terms, that's when you pursue excellence. Spinoza said, all excellent things are as difficult as they are rare. If you imagine building a cathedral, you can't do it by yourself. You will collaborate and bring others in. And I think leaders and teachers today have to help people paint the picture of their metaphoric cathedral. And finally, let's admit, how many of us have been told hope is not a strategy, hope is not a plan? Come on, how many of you have ever said this to somebody? When FDR told us we have nothing to fear but fear itself, that was an elegant, double negative way of saying don't lose hope. When people lose hope, they disengage. They lean out. Only people animated by the most human value of all. You could maybe have a world without love, but never a world without hope. Only people animated by hope see possibility, see others as collaborators and friends that they can do things together. So even though hope is technically not a strategy, without hope, there is never a strategy, and without hope, there is no journey. From my heart, I'm a kindred spirit. It's an honor for me to be part of this community. We must become purveyors of hope and create cultures and contexts so full of hope that, in fact, people feel that their dreams and aspirations are possible so that they can make them reality. Thank you so much for the opportunity to spend the morning with you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.